So I woke up this morning thinking about how much I've been missing my grandchildren because they've moved away. And, it sent me thinking about how change in our life often triggers a grief response. And even when someone's still alive, just having to move away or not be as close can be, the heart kind of perceives that as a loss. And so, even if it's a good thing, and and especially when it doesn't feel like a good thing. So it set me thinking about death, and I've had some losses, and I was thinking about children because I know as a child, um, people didn't talk about death around children, and it was hard because I don't think that adults used to realize that children grieve too. They just don't necessarily, the brain hasn't developed enough to be able to always identify what it is that's happening, but also because children need to talk about it. That's how they process it. And so, if they have adults in their lives who can allow them just the space and the comfort to be able to express their feelings and emotions, then I think they probably process it as naturally or even more naturally than we do, because as adults, we tend to try to think our way through things rather than feel our way through things. And children come straight from the heart. So, I was pondering in my own life. I know that um, I felt losses at an early age. Every time we moved, I felt a loss of my friends. I felt a loss of safety. I felt a loss of the familiar, my school, my teachers, my home, um, landmarks. We don't realize that children don't really um, have the concepts when they're really, really young about maps and distances and things. And they really learn about their world through landmarks, just the familiar things that they see every day. I mean, I remember one of my children was very young, and when we were traveling, he'd light up every time he saw McDonald's arches. He couldn't barely talk yet, but he knew that that meant food, and um, it was just interesting to watch my own children grow up and then to remember my own childhood. And now we know that children grieve, and I believe the babies grieve, when there's changes in their environment, s- in their not in their routines. When a routine changes, often we forget that they don't know the concept of time, and so for them, routines are a portion of predictability. But so this is where my mind ran off to today, and what my heart said is that there must be a story for children to help them through these times. That it's what connects us all in being human, no matter how old we are or how young we are. That people come and go from our lives. Life changes constantly. The only constant we can really know in life is that it does change from moment to moment, and that people are born and that people are die, and that really trying to protect children from death is not kind, because it doesn't allow them the opportunity to know that their feelings are okay and how they express it. So anyway, I found a really great little book, and I really enjoyed. I tried to find a YouTube video thinking maybe somebody had already read it, but it wasn't out there. And this little book, now this is on my, I don't know how this is going to work. Okay, yeah, it does. It just takes a second. It's called I Miss You, because this is on my Kindle, on my iPad. I don't have a hard copy of it. So I'm going to read this morning. Every day someone is born, and every day someone dies. Okay, here we go. We're going to have the light first and then the picture. There we go. Death is a natural part of life. All living things grow, change, and eventually die. When someone dies, their body stops working, they stop breathing, and their heart stops beating. They can't think or feel anymore. They don't eat or sleep anymore, not in our world. And there's the picture. I showed the pictures because I know it was important to my kids when they were little to see the pictures. In books and in movies, it is usually bad people who die, but in real life, good people die too. People die for different reasons. Some people die because they're old. Some people get very sick and then they die. Some people die because something unexpected and tragic happened to them. What about you? Has anyone you know died? How did they die? I think I was about 7 or 8 years old when a little girl in my school got cancer and she died from cancer. And then I was 9, maybe, when a little girl died from diabetes. And it was sad. And I just don't remember people talking about it. And I also grew up during the 60s. I was a child and I was very young, but I remember that people died in the war. You know, there was the Vietnam War. We have other wars going on now. And we have more media exposure to people being killed, even in our own country. And there aren't too many children anymore who don't know somebody that's died or had a pet died. And so we all have these experiences. And I was 7 when my grandpa died on my birthday. And that probably made me think a lot more about that. And so, anyway, what about you? Here's the picture. Death is a natural part of life. All living things grow, change, and eventually die. Oh, my cats are fighting. When someone dies, their body stops working. Okay, I already read that part. I'm sorry. In books and in movies, it is usually bad people who die, but in real life, good people die too. Oh, my pages went backwards for some reason. After a person dies, excuse me, here we go. After a person dies, there is usually a ceremony called a funeral. At the funeral, people who knew that person gather together to say goodbye. They may bring flowers, tell stories, or recite poems. You know, I know some people that don't think children should go to funerals, but children need to have some kind of resolution too. They need to be able to see a beginning and an ending. And this is usually our ending here in the US. It doesn't mean that all cultures have the same kind of endings. Different people have different, um, some people have go away parties. So it's all different, you know. But my point is, children need to be included in those. It can be hard to say goodbye to someone you love. It is normal to miss them very, very much. When someone dies, especially if the death is sudden, it is normal to think of things you wished you had said or things you wished you had not said. You may wish you had been nicer or more helpful, but the way you behaved did not make that person die, and that's important to remember that. You didn't make them die. To remind yourself that he or she died loving you for who you were, not for the things you did or said. That is really important. To remind yourself that he or she died loving you for who you were, not for the things you did or said. And you know, I want to stop here and say that sometimes people die who didn't love us. And that's not our fault either. Death is something that's beyond our control. We don't have any control over death and in other people dying unless we harm them or try to hurt them physically. But that's different. Though we're not talking about that today. We're talking about when people just die, you know, and because they're sick or because they're elderly and our bodies just stop working, you know. So that's a whole different issue. And you know, trying to remember that the love, I believe the love's always there, that it never goes away. It lives in our hearts if we allow it to. The love they felt for us goes on living inside our hearts as we love ourselves. When someone you love dies, it can feel as if your heart has been torn into. It can feel as if part of you is missing. And do you know that the brain cells in your head where your feelings are come from chemically? It's like little chemicals in our brains. They're fluid and they make us feel things. We have the same cells now they've discovered around our heart. And so sometimes when we say, I feel like my heart's going to break, it's because it really does feel like that. It's synced with our brain cells and our heart cells. And so you can really feel like your heart is broken. These feelings can take a long time to get over. You may feel lots of different sad feelings before you begin to feel like yourself again. What about you after someone dies? Then it's normal to feel sad and angry, guilty, afraid, and even happy. So, what are you feeling today? It's important what you're feeling. It's important to express it, through your words or writing or art. It's important to share it, with other people, whether you just journal it or you call somebody or you get into a support group. There's a lot of places that have grief support groups. There's online places. Talking with your friends about it. Not everybody can handle hearing about our grief because sometimes if they haven't lost somebody, they don't understand it. Or perhaps they've been trained that they weren't supposed to express their grief. So sometimes expressing it to people, it's kind of like their cup's already full and we're pouring more water in it than it can hold. And so it's important to find people who feel comfortable about listening to your grief. It doesn't mean something's wrong with you for feeling sad or for feeling lonely or angry. It means that you need safe people to be able to talk to about it. When someone you love dies, it can be hard to do all the normal things you did before. You might not feel like seeing your friends or joining in groups. You may feel very alone. People may find it hard to talk to you. This is not because they don't care, but because they don't know what to say or to help you. What about you? Do you love someone? Do you have someone you can talk to when you're feeling sad? What sort of things make you feel better right now? And that's really important because there's an acronym called HALT: hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. And two of those are physical things, like being tired, we can take a nap. Being hungry, we can get some protein in our body, and let our bodies start to heal physically. But angry and lonely, we can write those feelings down. We can call somebody. It usually means we need to connect with someone safe who can hear us. And for people that don't know what to do when someone else, in case you have a friend or you know somebody, when you don't know what to say, just say, I'm here to listen, and then just listen. You don't need to fix somebody. Somebody just might need to have you there while they talk. And so being able to say something as simple as, thank you for sharing that, or I feel honored that you shared that with me. But knowing that you don't have to fix them or pick it up, they just need your presence. They just need your heart to be there. And that helps people in their healing process. It supports them in their healing process. I'm going to show you the picture. There's a lot we don't know about death. Every culture has different beliefs about what happens after a person dies. But most cultures also share some beliefs, like the idea that a person dies, their soul or part of them that made them special takes a journey to join the souls of other people who have passed away. And some people believe that we don't go anywhere for a while after death. And some people believe that when we die, that's the end. So everybody has different belief systems. It's important not to argue with someone who's grieving and tell them what they should believe. Just kind of let them work it out on their own. If they ask you what you believe, you can share it, but you need to let it go after you share it. So here we go. It's not easy to understand. Sometimes it helps if you think of the soul as a single raindrop joining in the big ocean, because there are many people, thousands of people, hundreds and thousands of people, millions of people, probably billions of people who have died before us. And so everybody's born, everybody eventually dies. There's only one way we come into the world, and there's only one way we go out. And nobody here lives forever. So we all have that in common. Even after someone you know or love dies, life goes on. The things you learn from that person stay inside of you and become part of you forever. You get to choose. As time goes on, you will realize that no one is completely gone as long as you can remember the one you love. I know that feeling. I loved my grandparents very, very much. And I was so sad when they died, especially my grandma. She was tiny, and she was always very sensitive about what it was like to be a child. We had small little silverware for our little tiny hands, so she said that we could handle it better. We had small children-sized cups and a child-sized table that we could eat at. And she was just very much aware, because she was tiny, she was only 4'10", the children lived in a world of grown-ups, and that it was hard for them to walk as fast as an adult. It was hard for them to handle adult silverware. And I just loved her so much. And it's still something inside of me that I think of. But I'm so grateful that I had her, because I can carry all that she taught me about children in my heart. And that was the greatest gift that she gave me, was to be aware of what it was like to be a child living in an adult world. And that's the end of this story. But that's why we need to realize how each and every person who comes across our path is important, because there's always something we can learn about ourselves, about them, and that really life is just a big mirror. It's a big opportunity to learn about ourselves. And I hope that helps you today to understand that. I know that if you're a child watching this, that you have feelings, that they're important, because sometimes finding words to share our feelings is hard. I know my daughter taught my granddaughter sign language. They have a lot of very expressive feeling gestures. I think it's very helpful, for all of us sometimes to have those gestures, and to find our words, to have important people in our lives that let us share whatever it is that we're feeling without telling us how we should feel, or telling us that what we're feeling is wrong, or just not listening to us and holding a really safe space for us to be able to share with one another. That is so incredibly important to everyone, and especially if you're a child. And teenagers are children growing up into adults. They're young adults, and so they need that space too. And so even though you're 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and the world expects you to act like you're adult, you still get to take care of that child that's still inside of you. So I hope you treat yourselves well as well. So Everyone be blessed and have a wonderful day. And thank you for making it through this tape with me. I know sadness isn't something any of us like to talk about,